Okay, this is my critical reflection on my coaching session that was just done after lockdown. So first off, it's just going to look at some overarching questions. So first, is this approach constructivist? I've said for the rest of my portfolio that that's the approach I'm going to do. Is that what's coming across in my coaching? Based on that, am I doing it? Am I being game based? Does it have some of the elements of TGFU? Even though I wasn't following that religiously. What's my use of feedback and questioning? Is it in keeping or is it in line with the beliefs? Am I using that in the right sort of way? And then also after that, I keep saying in other works that I've done that I'm a believer of Vygotsky. Am I using any of those principles or evidence of any of them in my coaching? And then is there any reflective social learning evidence of elements of COP going in there? So we're going to see some clips and then readdress these questions afterwards.
Hey, go!
10 points!
10 points! Woo-hoo! Yeah, it's worth 10. You've counted them. Well done. 10-0. Reds are going to kick off in 5 seconds. Make sure you're ready. Reds, go! Play it out first, play it back, and then we're live. Good. Okay. Play green! It's dead, swap! Yeah, Chris wants to play then, go on then. Let Chris have his moment. Now it's the swap. 10 seconds to complete your swap. I am going to make a gag reel for all the fuck ups, don't worry. Play!
Oh, Lewis. Yeah.
What a great way. Alright, guys, pause there for a second. Just come in for 10 seconds. Right. I want to give you 5 minutes of playing the game, so now you understand the basic ideas of the game. You should be able to start to understand it. Right, the whole principle today is pressing as a team. That's what we're going to get through to. So actually, this is working on two things. It's working on attack. Can we break down the opposition? But equally, on the other side of that coin, the one I'm really focusing on is how do we press as a team? How do we keep a board up in the wind? All right. We need to know by the end of today, as a team, I want us to have a better idea of what we're going to do to transition into a good defensive shape. When's the right time? Who's the right person? And where's the right areas to press that ball? Okay, and then the other one is know how we can control. Just because I don't have the ball, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not in control of the game. Atletico Madrid are probably the masters of that. They don't need much possession, yet they somehow control football matches. And that's because they understand this principle better than anyone else. I don't care if where you want to press the ball, if you want to press it at all. Do you want to sit all the way back when it's your turn to defend and try and do a Leicester and then break them? Do you want to have it in the middle and try and go there, or do you want to go right up there? I'm giving you 1 minute. Ben's going to lead the green team. Mark's going to lead the red team. Go back, talk. How are you going to approach this? How are you going to get the ball back from the opposition? Have a chat. I'll give you 1 minute to chat. Talk it through. I say a minute. I'll extend it for you a little bit, but I don't want it too long, or else I'll just get cold. Just give you a chance.
Literally one question in the last third. If they have to press in the last third, they'll make your man pass you. Everyone happy with that?
You're suggesting get to the last third before they even get out.
No, we're going to get halfway.
Right, get in the middle.
Have you
seen
any of them not turn around and pass it backwards? Because I haven't.
So as soon as
they pass backwards, everyone presses as a team, push them into
as soon as we're live, we press on them.
We press from the off right into the last third, because if we win the ball back up top, it's then 10 points.
So are there going to be any Are there going to be any areas, or are there going to be any people on that team in particular that you're going to target?
Smiley face, closest person to the ball goes. Then
everyone out shuffle.
Okay, who's leading that though? Don't mind, it's up to you. Decide who's going to lead it, who's going to make the call. If it's going wrong, you need someone to make sure they can control that and discipline it. Do you need a plan B if that's going wrong, or do you not need a plan B? Last 20 seconds, guys, then we'll go back into it.
Only one person back. You can track back and get past you. Because they're going to have to jump when they can't pass it.
Okay, let's. We've got 10 seconds to line ourselves up. Reds are going to start. Now, to give you a bit of practice, Reds are going to kick off for the next 2 or 3 minutes non-stop. They're always going to start. Then after 2 or 3 minutes, Greens, you're then going to get a go at just starting. So that means Greens are going to get 2 or 3 minutes of practicing their defensive situation. And then we'll swap. The scoring system still applies. That scoring system actually should help you with your decision. There is an emphasis here on the counter-attack. If you get the 10, that's of high value. Defending them and keeping them out is only worth 1 point. So you've got to think of the value of that. Okay, every kickoff is Reds, just for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Go! Yeah, he kept it. Don't tackle him on the outside. Yeah, the only issue with your strategy is that when they've got it there, they've got more players.
Keep pressing them,
and that's what they can do. Good! 10, reset. Next, Reds will start again. Yeah, on the lines in. Okay. Greens, I'm going to change it now. You're only playing with 3 in at a time. Can you still affect the game with less players? You still have 4, they're going to have 3. Can they still be successful with just 3 players on the pitch? Play!
Call it! Left shoulder. Watch that right. Yeah, cross, go on.
Still there.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, Luke. Here, go. Your players in your half. Yeah, back to Luke.
Just 10 more seconds.
Time, relax. Don't force it. Don't force it.
Yeah, wide, Mark.
5, 4, 3, 2. Unlucky. Swap. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well done.
Nice one, boys. Well done, Louis.
Swap again. Yeah, swap again. Don't have to dribble through lines. No. If I didn't put that rule in to start with, it just comes a little bit too easy. Go!
Don't have to dribble through lines.
Yeah, you just do what you like. That line rule does not exist.
Use the players.
Come on!
Yeah, reset. Go! Just hold it. Just hold it 10 seconds. We just need to be clear on when we are and when we're not going, because there's a couple of times there where 2 of us have gone, yep, that's what I'm going to press, and 2 of us have gone, no, that's not what I'm going to press, and then you've got a massive gap between front and you've got a massive gap between back, and then if they get one pass through you, you're fucked. Just a conversation. Know exactly when I'm going to go and when I'm not going to go. It's your choice. Am I going to sit back and when I lose the ball and get into shape? Or am I going to press them high? Or am I going to wait for a trigger in the middle? That's your choice. Right, so yeah, so someone lead that and just have an agreed decision. Okay, greens, 3, 2, 1, play.
White, really white, really white, really white.
Man on! Yeah.
Well done, Bally.
Yeah, that's fine. Just pause. Wait. Just wait 1 minute. Liam, stay there. Mark, stay there. Luke and Ben, go up. Yeah. Just keep going. And stop. Like, that's the pictures for the Reds just before. I know it went out, but this would concern me on the pitch because of what Ben's doing right now. I'm standing in the middle. If we get our 2 lines split, if that's the midfield and that's the defence, if I'm a number 10 or if I'm a number 9, I know you need a lot of imagination for this. This is a fucking dream for me. Harry King will be having an erection thinking about this. It's a huge gap between. We're either up and really working it and hoping that we can get the ball before they can do that, or we're just going to sit back. What we can't have is a massive split, because we're just going to get, instead of being a 4, you're now 2 2s and you're just going to get torn apart. Okay, sorry, Reds, now you can swap. Play! Yeah, go!
Not too fast. Hold it here. Get a bit wider. Cross, lads, cross, shuffle.
Yeah, we'll reset then. I'm giving the Reds extra now, so Green's got more to think about. Really, I would expect the Reds to outnumber you. They're in their defence, have got our 2 centre backs back, so yeah, they should outnumber us, really, if they're set up right. So, Jez, go down, deliver the ball in. What do we do now? We're outnumbered, Greens. Yeah, whenever you're ready. Keeper's ball!
Yeah! No, not there. Get Shane!
Get it, Jez!
Come back! That's the men.
Okay. Reds, we'll start from a goal kick. Mark, if just or anything. So Reds, go to Mark, have just a... Reds, if you just go to Mark a minute. Jay, just come in.
You alright up there?
If you want to swap positions, that might be a good time, Reds.
Hey, you alright? Right back.
Shoot there. I was gonna.
Come on, Chris, come on.
He went there. Hold it. Can't say shit with the cross game.
No, you can't say no.
Just I was on a plate. Well, why don't you? Can't see the fucking ball.
You just got to guess where it is.
Yeah.
If you I had to do that on Saturday, hit me on the head luckily. The you got to make a decision, guys. So whether you want to go full on press this, or you want to drop all the way back and have an easy pick up back in your own half, or you want to go in the halfway line. It's in like the halfway house. Looking at our team and the way we are, I have my preference, and my preference would be to go to the halfway house and look for triggers and look for when am I going to go after that ball and I'm going to set up. Every time he has the ball in a goal kick, I know how I'd like to set up. Right, you've got to think, which areas do you not want them to get the ball in? How can I force them to play by just us setting up? I can pick on players. If I want to pick on Taylor, Actually, if I want to pick on Taylor and Nathan, I can set up my pitch to make sure they get the ball first. Can I set up to get their weakest passes on the ball as quick as I can? It's just being nasty about it.
We've got that right now because we don't really have a left winger.
Yeah, and the one thing that was really good, Ben, it was when you was. This didn't happen on the reserves last Saturday. Is if the play's on this side, instead of the winger being out there all on his own, yeah, tuck him in, because then if the centre back comes in or anyone else comes in, suddenly we're outnumbered, even though we've got 3 guys in there. If he can come in, that gives Ben more licence, or any other midfielder more licence to go. So if we're going to do the halfway house here, we just need to have a conversation about when we're going to go, who we're going to target. If we do go, when are we going to pull out? Because if it goes to Taylor and he manages to pass it back to his keeper, do we keep pressing, or do we go, do you know what, mate, you've got this, we're going to drop off? You need to make that decision. Who are you targeting? When are you going to say fuck it? And who's making that call? Because someone needs to lead that. I don't care who, but you make that decision.
He's playing like top. Come, quick! Right side, right side! Left back!
Right. We'll reset it. Last thing, we're going to play for 5 more minutes. Last thing I'm going to say, for both teams, Liam, call it. For both teams, let's just remember where we're trying to funnel them. As soon as it came across there, and they have easy ball, that pass is always on. So what we've got to do is just adjust. The Greens were talking about isolating certain players. The only way to do that is we've been talking about first reserves. This is the area we don't want teams playing in, because this is traditionally where we're weak. Can I organise my team so no fucker ever gets in here? And the way to do that, as soon as I lose that, I'm going to pull my winger in. That fullback's free. That is my trigger. As soon as it goes to that fullback, or as soon as it goes to the player that you're deciding to target, that's when you can change tact. If they get an easy ball, do I keep on pressing, or are they just going to stop and drop off? I advise you drop off, to be honest, because you're just going to run yourself into ground. You just need a bit more communication with them. It's a lot better than it was at the start of the season, guys, when we first did this. That was interesting. Jez, you're going to go down, deliver. We've got just a couple more minutes left on this. Then we'll have a 1-minute chat. We'll go into a game to end with when I don't say a single word. Go on, Jez, play. Start from a goal kick. It's the time to set yourselves up. Talk about it. Yeah. Set your trap. Where do you want them to play? Once they play there, what are you going to do to respond? You could, Jez, you could tuck in. He's no threat, yeah? All the way in. Then you come out when you've got the ball. Okay, people out just with the green team, if you come to me. You're in college, aren't you? Well, pretty good. You have that. You like writing. Yeah. Right, green team. If you just go over there.
Oh crap! One with
This is your team basically. So you make the rules up for us when we're pressing. What does it look like for AFC when we're pressing the ball in their half? For basically what you're doing, the do's and the don'ts for what we were just doing. That's your decision. Just 3 or 4 ideas. What they're doing is just writing down what the do's and the don'ts are from us as a club, their point of view. Now in a minute you can disagree with that as much as you want, that's up to you. But there are some things you probably found really easy about that and some things you found really hard about it. You've got to make that decision about when they're at what times are we going to press the ball, what times are we going to drop, or what's a good time for us to do either of those two things. Occasionally, we just go full on hog and try and win the ball back. There are times and signals when we're going to stop. For instance, if a player gets the ball on his feet and is able to look up at the back, we've probably lost the opportunity to press, so we might want to sit back. I don't know what they're going to come up with, but you're more than welcome to disagree with it, because there's no point in me press if that doesn't suit us. Equally, there's no point of me saying we're going to sit back and hold a deep line if we're not comfortable doing that. So we got to find something that we can work on as a team.
Sometimes it depends on the opposition as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they might come up with things that you disagree with, or they might, for instance, what they were trying to do was attack down. They were trying to isolate a couple of people, so they decided they were going to try and isolate Taylor and try and work on Taylor, and they were going to try and isolate Gareth and work off Gareth and try and manipulate it so the ball went there. So they tried to set up in a way that they kept those two free, and then the ball kept going there, and they're trying to make you play in certain areas. Now, whether or not you think they're successful at that's up to you. Guys who just missed that bit, I would talk it through with you, but we can talk it through on a later date. In 2 minutes, we're going to go into a game, so we're just gonna play across, all right? And we'll just end on a game with no one chatting, and then we'll just run around, keep warm. Yeah, I won't bother having subs, because even though there's a lot of us, I just think it's too cold. Do you want to bring yours over and we'll see what they got?
What are we saying about the play?
You feedback to Reds what you feel then. It's your team, Chris. You feedback to Reds. What have you decided?
You were listening?
Yeah. That is a classic teacher tool. You look for the one who's not paying any fucking attention and ask them to do it. And then you can tell they're not listening because they're looking at their friends. Help me. Go on, read it through then.
Yeah, what the rules?
Mike, if you want to divide them in half and start getting the teams sorted.
Read from the book. Do you actually want Chris to read it? Or?
Anyone. I don't care who.
So you open up to one side, normally the weaker side.
Yeah.
In that game there, no effects on Nathan, but that was what we class as the weaker side. Once the ball's gone to the weaker side, then the attackers press. That's the 9, the 10, and that side's winger. Press the ball, try and win it back high. 2 CDMs, once that's pressed on, sit off a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're hoping that they get the ball long, and then our CDMs can pick the ball up, and then it's our play anyway. Then, if there's an easy ball out, or the ball gets switched to the other side, the whole team drops off and we all.
Anyone? Do you have, for us going in on Saturday? Does anyone have any disagreements about that? Because you see any problems with that? Yeah. Dropping off is the key one, and just making sure that we do that. The only thing I would pat on that, the thing that we do, the reserves, especially because I witnessed it. I can't say about the first team. If it's on the left-hand side, the left-hand side winger, I know I've said, look, the winger's responsibility is to look after the fullback. That's true. But if it's on the left-hand side, that fullback's out of the game. So you might as well tuck all the way in with the central midfield players, and then the central midfield players can help. What happens with the reserves is that their central midfielder went out wide, overloaded the wide, and because we've told the central guys to stay central, we got outnumbered. If the winger comes across, then Mark and the others can actually go out and affect the ball. What happened, Mark, on Saturday was you went out, and because you went out, as soon as they put it back in, because our wingers on the other side, it then turned into a 4-4-2 and we just got overrun. So if the opposite winger comes in, then we've got spares. But actually, that was pretty good. Well done, guys. Mike's dividing you up into a game. We're just going to go into a game because it's getting a little bit chilly. I know it loses realism that we're having everyone play, but I just think it's a little bit nippy, so we're just going to go straight into a game and just run. Cheers, guys. Cheers. Listen to Mike. Mike, you got more people coming to you to record you now. To get separated by you now. It's fine.
You want me to say the Mike picture?
Okay, so here I've got up some of the key information around constructivist. I'm not critiquing the literature. That's within the other part. The assignment part of my project is critiquing the literature, the research, and the theory. This is critiquing myself against said theory around the constructivist. So if I'm going to take a constructivist approach to it, then that means my pedagogy and the way I approach things, they need to be hands-on, athlete-centered, non-passive, elements of discovery, high levels of questioning, and that's why I've put questioning as a one later in this, with cooperation and encouraging. I think with both, especially that first task, it was very easy for me to have done a kind of a traditional stop-start way of doing that, but I've created a game scenario which had different levels, and it was up to them to try and solve the problem of how do we A, stop the opponent scoring, and B, how do we get the ball back off them, enabling us to score. There were also bits of this with the social learning aspects with Bandura, which I'm going to go into later, about the observation and the modelling, but that was also important within that. I thought that the idea of it simulating worlds to help in ideas of Piaget trying to construct or remodel existing schemas of understanding how to do things, so you making it as realistic as possible, looking at that and looking at the definitions from the constructivist stuff out there, from how people have summed up the works of Piaget and Piaget itself. I would cautiously consider that approach in itself is constructivist, and even when there are times within that you saw me having to step in and address things, that doesn't go against constructivist, which I had to struggle with over the course of this. That's part of it, knowing the time to go in and support in those liminal spaces, especially, and help learners get over that. It is an important part of it, and again, I'll be touching on that a little bit later. But as an overall pedagogy approach, I do feel that was quite constructivist in its formation. So the next one was looking at it being game-based and having a look at teaching games for understanding. Now, even though I didn't go out with the intention of rigidly or explicitly following teaching games for understanding, it did, when you read around it, it did seem like the logical thing to do, because in the teaching games for understanding text itself, to quote it directly, it says, "You're given these definitions. We argue that current teaching games for understanding model has more of a constructivist connotation," and it's saying that that's because of the presenting of problems, students involvement in an adapted game, in setting and series of questions that lead to responses that should address problems within said game. And all of that's feeding into a constructivist approach. So if I use teaching games for understanding as a marker, if a lot of what that session is similar to the teaching games for understanding text, then it follows that means that if teaching games for understanding is a constructivist pedagogy, as a constructivist theory behind its pedagogy, there we go, then if mine is similar, then mine must follow the similar sort of state. So if you're looking at the key principles of having a game appreciation, tactical awareness, making appropriate decisions, well, again, we created a game, gave them time to understand and adapt and appreciate the rules and the tasks within the game, allowed them to have discussions and develop tactical awareness, I felt, within that first one, without actually giving them answers. And it was about giving them spaces to develop their awareness and make appropriate decisions. And then the other ones, the key ones, is you're active. It's active and it's not passive. Now I would argue there's a little bit of debate around, are the ones on the side who are observing passive because they're not taking part, and actually because of the rotation, that was a conscious and purposeful decision. Am I creating some passive learners? Well, that depends on my definition of passive. Later on, when we go on to the social aspects again, if I'm going to go at Bandura, that I could probably argue that's not passive, but I can understand why someone might see, well, why are they standing on the side? The feeders aren't getting much out of it. You can argue they're passive. Was there high levels of decision making? Yeah, I would argue there was, on both a micro and a macro level. Whilst the game's going on, having to make those little micro decisions as they're going on, because I wasn't. There was times where I did step in and make decisions, but actually the times I made decisions for them came at the latter end. So they were making decisions for themselves prior to my interventions, and then they had time to talk as a group to make some macro decisions about an overarching approach. The modification of the rules and the players were all trying to hone in on certain aspects of what I was trying to get out. Now, the one I've not mentioned on there was learner-centered. I'm a little bit struggling with that one on the sense of, was that truly learner-centered? It's learner-centered in the sense of that is what the group needed, and that it, as an overarching thing, it was what it was needed. It's what it was needed, and they led a lot of that, and they made a lot of the decisions. I guided them through some of those decisions, but we came to an agreed and negotiated approach by the end. But is it learner-centered on an individual level? Probably not, and that's probably where I need to work on a little bit with that, because as a group, it was team. I'd argue it was team-centric, not player-centric. I don't think it was player-centered. There wasn't a lot of. There's a couple who got individual things, but it was more about the overarching team rather than the individuals. The group looked after the individuals, and the individuals got things out of it. I can't really say I differentiated for many, not for every single player. So maybe that's something that needs to be worked on. But overall, I think a lot of that did fall into being a game-based teach games for understanding setup. The next overarching question was looking at my use of questioning and feedback, and does that align with my beliefs around learning, or do I need to change that? Based on my beliefs around how I think people learn and what that impact of my pedagogy, if I'm looking at these game-based approaches, and if I'm looking at Chow et al., I should put et al. There, 2016, with non-linear thoughts about learning, then questioning is there to help with the guided discovery process, which is a very constructivist way of looking at it. Create inclusive interactions between learners and coaches. Only ask when needing, and knowing when not, as asking too many questions can hinder the learning. If we're learning in a constructivist guise, and that you ask too many questions, you don't leave enough room for the discovery and understanding and the shaping of their world, the shaping of that schema, then you're hindering that process. I know a lot of the clips had me talking in it and of the nature of the clips, but I've always liked setting questions and stepping back and observing and seeing if they can work out the answers to those questions, and then at a later point stepping in and almost revealing more of the picture, or guiding their direction depending on where they've decided to go. And that would fit in with that. And when I was a teacher, questioning was always written up as one of my strengths. Naturally, I naturally use open-ended questions, and I use questions to legitimately encourage people to find their own answers to questions, and use it to encourage dialogue. And even when they were starting to struggle, rather than stepping in and give just one question, just give the answer, as what as Clark 2005 would say, sometimes provide a range of answers to explore possibilities, rather than just saying, "Oh, it's this one." Well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, through your questioning, and it's focusing them when they're a little bit when they are stuck, which might lean into the Vygotsky thing we go into later. Giving oppositional questions, playing devil's advocate with questions, it's like I love doing, and that falls into that. Now, that's some people consider the Shirley Clarke formative assessment in action, but quite tween. It is primarily aimed at children, but I'm taking out the bits of that. When I read some of the things about questioning and about feedback, and I compare it to some of the other work, I feel it does fit in with quite a constructivist way of going about it. It's not perfect what I'm doing on reflection, and I need to work on some things. Again, I don't think that individualized part is there. When I've stepped into an individual in that session, I'm giving answers, I'm giving a bit of, and then stepping back out. When I'm going into twos or threes or the whole group or whatever the other connotation of the numbers are, I am giving those questions and giving and providing open-ended questions and guiding their discovery through the use of questioning. I'm not doing it on an individual basis, and the more I reflect on this, the more I'm thinking that on an individual basis, that's where my pedagogy is starting to misalign. So I'm going to have to, like with the previous one, feedback on that. And even within the Teaching Games for Understanding book, the idea of gaining insight to why they're not proceeding to better meet their needs. So, all the questions I was giving there was to guide them. Well, if I'm taking a constructivist approach on this, and I'm thinking about the schemas and thinking about Piaget, they're creating their own view of the world, and they're constructing their understanding. If I don't understand what they're constructing and the way they see the world and the way they see things, how am I meant to effectively support their learning? I'm going to be biased in making some erroneous assumptions about how they see things, and then the way I help them won't be as effective. So I need to use some of the questions, not just to make them move forward or help them guide them move forward in the way I think they need guiding, but also to elicit more information about the nature of their understanding of the task, the environment, and the whole picture. So I make sure what I'm giving them is actually what they need, not what I think they need. So when I read that bit, that was something that stood out. And the last bit was showing and telling is sometimes appropriate. I've probably been a little bit in the past too, or I don't want to be instructional, I don't want to give that. Well, again, especially when you go into the works of Vygotsky, that's actually within the constructivist approach, within a game-based approach, within all of these guided discovery approaches, it still is appropriate to go in. You don't want too much freedom. And when you say guided discovery within an educational sense, what they really meant was, from their interpretation, was just quite free reign, and you find your own answers. Well, you want those support, you want the scaffold, the learning and things with the questions, but you don't want to go too far the other way. And I was worried about going too far the other way with telling us with feedback. Well, actually, sometimes that is appropriate. So I did it a couple of times in that session. I think, and then it's just for me as a coach, it's learning when is appropriate and when is not appropriate to do that, stepping into that feedback. I then wanted to look at whether my ideas lined up with some of the ideas of Vygotsky, because especially within the teaching profession, on reflection and some of the texts talk about this, that it was Vygotsky was seen, is used within an education sense as a pedagogical tool. Well, it's not. It's a learning theory, and if done correctly, it's a game-based approach. It's something that it underlines, it underpins what's going on rather than being an actual thing. And I've got to reflect on that and look at the sessions and see how that does. So if you're looking at that zone for proximal development and scaffolding, is there the evidence that there's a more knowledgeable person assisting? Are they participating in activities just slightly above their current level in that that ideal that zone? Is there evidence that some people are moving from the assistance to the self-assistance, and that was the sort of things that I was going to be look at. And was that if I read the bottom bit there and looking at what it should lead to, if what I'm doing is Vygotskyan in nature, there should be a non-prescriptive approach. Well, I thought that wasn't none of the two things that none of the task was prescriptive. I set goal challenges and posed questions. I gave an overarching theme, and we had a question that we wanted to get an answer to and come to a conclusion with, or an idea of, by the end. But it wasn't prescriptive. I thought I let them tackle it in their own way, and I didn't tell them when to use skills for the most of the time. There was one time on the second session where on one of the clips where I am stepping in and saying, well, look, if this happens, you need the person to give an example, because we were struggling. But again, stepping in and giving that sort of assistance is okay, because then the next bit further down on that section says not full freedom of decision making, as you need to check and guide it to it, and scaffold that learning. It's that, and this is the bit that has really struck home with me over the course of this. It's not giving too much. It's that Goldilocks zone of not giving too much and becoming prescriptive and being robotic, not giving enough so that it becomes wrong in the sense that they're just going down this different, going down the wrong path with too much freedom. It's finding the right level of guidance and the right type of guidance at the right moment. Sorry, Siri just interrupted me. Then I always get interrupted doing these sort of audio clips. So another example of that in action within that video clip within the session, I thought, was when one team was becoming really successful in the first drill. So if they're becoming really successful and they're finding it a little bit easy and they're starting to dominate, I'm going to remove a player and see if they can still function and find solutions to it with less players. Are they able to still function and find solutions? And that was me attempting to scaffold things and push them hard. Or there was the one time when I came in and they were having that discussion, and they looked. The first team I came to talk to on the first break, they were talking about their approach, and they came to quite a quick conclusion. It's like, okay, so what if, and then what about this, what about this, what about this, to try and move their conversation on to the next step. Can I expand? Because it seemed like that first step was there. Okay, they're ready for that next step? Can I just push them slightly above what the attempt was to push them, what their current ability was? Again, whether this has been individualized or not enough to be fully immersed within what I'm doing. I don't know. Within teams, within groups, I think I'm scaffolding. I think I've got quite a Vygotskian underpinning to my approaches through some of the things we've talked about earlier, through my questioning, through the structure of the sessions. Is it individualized? And that's the one that just keeps coming out on this. How do I think the overarching thing is, how do I apply this theory with to an individual within a team context, which would be probably the next steps for development with this. The last one for me was was around social learning, and as a personal one, this is really interesting for me, and it's also quite a difficult one to truly assess and reflect upon within sessions like that. Again, if I'm looking at the Bandura stuff, and that first session was set out and you had people watching, well then there was that argument like I was talking about earlier about, are they passive or are they active? Well, part of the social thing is that observation phase. Observing things within a community, within a culture, within a social context, and then having the motivation to try and apply changes that's being modelled and you've observed, to try and apply that within the practice. So when I look at the video, the people stationed as these quite passive feeders are still active within, they're still focused in on that and watching and engaging mentally with it, even if they're not physically participating. So from a social learning perspective, maybe having that passive bit, because it was only short and sharp, and then they're back in, getting that balance is difficult, but I feel that there was the potential for that to be quite a useful tool within a social learning context. But it's difficult because, like with Vygotsky, this isn't a pedagogy. This is learning theory, and they're really interested in the work of Lehmann-Wenger, talking about the situated learning, which does link in really nicely with game-based approaches, with the constructivist model, and then going on to the communities of practice. Again, it's not a pedagogy. It's just it's an idea. Are these looking at the criteria from that training session? Is that a community of practice? Is there that joint enterprise? Is there that mutual engagement and shared repertoire that with it for that classification? I'm going to have to observe more sessions to get a real strong answer on that. The more I think about it, the more I think it's actually quite close to becoming one. I think it's over the course of the couple of years with that group, it has. If you asked me that question, or if I asked that question of myself 2 years ago, I would have said no, because definitely wasn't that joint enterprise and mutual engagement. That wasn't there. It was actually quite a prescriptive approach. But now that they're having a control and they've actually got a lot of ownership with it, and it is a negotiated way of going about things. We adapt to their needs, and the way that we do things are adaptive. It's actually really close. I feel it potentially hits those two. Now, the shared repertoire one, I was hoping it would come out in the session, but it didn't. One example for the shared repertoire is called Western Rules, which we have, and that is something that is adapted and changed over the course of about 10 years. So Western Rules used to be a joke of how poor the officiating and the running of the league was, saying, well, that's not a football rule, that's a Western rule. And then over time, that evolved to players taking it upon themselves to say Western rules when something bad happened as a way to argue back with refs and show dissent, so that we all knew they were showing dissent without them knowing that we've shown dissent. And then over time, it's morphed again into us on the pitch shouting it to encourage players. Just forget about it. It's a trigger to go, do you know what? That's you've just got to get on with the game. And now it's morphed again into a thing that's when Western rules is shouted by someone on a training pitch. Those who have been there for a while know that means it's going to be a rough 5 minutes, and we're going to break a lot of rules, and no one's going to complain about it. No, there's going to be no fouls given, no matter what the foul is. No offsides are going to be given, and there's going to be accepted cheating, and that's something that's that's a thing that's evolved quite organically, and could be evidence of a shared repertoire. And the people who are coming in that's unique to our culture and unique to that community. So for people on the peripheries of that to become a legitimate periphery participant. Sorry, my throat. Those are one of the things they have to learn to be accepted. I really like the social learning. I try and get that in. So that's why a lot of the questioning is there. Is the meat? Are there? Are things truly shared? Is it a social environment? I think in the past I've asked questions and I've scaffolded, but I've had a very strict. No, this is the outcome. This is the direction we're going for. Very, very me-centric, very coach-centric. I think it has evolved and changed now, and I would say I'm a lot based on some of the things that are happening in that session. I think it's whether or not I can say that's according to Wenger a community of practice. That's that. I'm still not sold on. I think it's closer than it's ever been to that as an environment for social learning. Is there a better emphasis around social learning within there at the moment? I would argue that there is, because there's much more of a legitimate negotiated communal sort of approach to doing things. There's a lot of conversation that goes on, and some of the more experienced people within that can lead and do the conversation. So when they're having chats, I gave a player called Ben and a player called Mark said that you're going to lead these conversations as experienced players and try and try and act almost like an apprentice and a master sort of thing, in line with some of the stuff about within Wenger, that they can take a role and the others can learn and start putting in their own ideas. And some of the younger ones, a kid called Ross in the second group, in that session he was putting his ideas forward, and they were adapting their approach to it. And then at the end of the session, we talked about an approach, and there was scaffolding and there was guiding, but I think with the social learning, it's been really powerful at having that help, because they've we agreed the AFC way of doing things, and it was a negotiated and agreed upon philosophy and a way of doing things, which was guided, but they've come to that and they've got ownership of that. So in that aspect, as a team, it is most definitely quite player centric, and it does reflect a lot on social learning. Whether or not it's, like I said, the communities of practice bit, I'm not entirely sure on yet. Moving forward for the next steps, it's definitely the communities of practice. Does this class of communities of practice? If not, what else do I have to do around it? I have to watch a few more sessions in the future. And the other bit moving forward would be, how does this? How do I get some of these things that I've found within my practice and apply them individually within a team sport?